December 28th, 48 BC, the coast of North Africa. Julius Caesar, conqueror of Gaul, victor of Pharsalus, dictator of Rome, stands on a desolate beach with just 3,000 men. He had crossed treacherous winter seas in his obsession to move quickly. Now he was paying the price. Behind the walls of Hadrumetum, 10,000 enemy soldiers watched, and somewhere beyond those walls, an army of 60,000 was waiting. Caesar had come to Africa to crush the last remnants of Pompey's faction. Instead, he was about to be crushed himself. This is the story of how Rome's greatest general nearly lost everything, and the price he paid for victory. Caesar's men stared at him with barely concealed fear. The storms had scattered their fleet. No supplies, no reinforcements, and the enemy knew exactly where they were. But Caesar had made a fatal error. In his rush to strike first, he'd given no clear written orders to his scattered fleet. His own veterans were blaming him, and Caesar, who built his legend on speed and decisiveness, had rushed straight into a trap. From inside Hadrumetum, the garrison commanders sent a messenger to Caesar. The man never returned. His body was found outside the gates the next morning, Caesar's peace offer still clutched in his dead hand. The message was clear. There would be no mercy here. Caesar had no choice. With only 3,000 infantry and 150 cavalry, he couldn't take the city, and his scouts brought worse news. A massive force of Numidian cavalry was closing in fast. Caesar broke camp and marched, but the moment his men abandoned their defenses, the gates of Hadrumetum burst open, the garrison poured out, and behind them, 8,000 Numidian cavalry led by King Juba himself. Caesar's small band of cavalry charged, desperately buying time. But this was exactly how his general Curio had died 3 years earlier, trapped against the coast, surrounded by Numidians who refused to fight head-on, but circled like wolves, hurling javelins into Roman flesh. For 6 brutal miles, Caesar's men fought a running retreat. Every 100 yards, his cavalry would charge to scatter the Numidians. Every 100 yards, they'd regroup and return, pelting his legions with missiles. The African sun beat down. Men collapsed from exhaustion. Others fell with Numidian javelins through their throats. But Caesar, veteran of 100 battles, refused to panic. Where Curio had stopped and been surrounded, Caesar kept moving. Where Curio had lost control, Caesar stayed cold and calculating. As the sun touched the horizon, the walls of Ruspina appeared. Caesar's men stumbled through the gates, bloody but alive. They had escaped, barely. But Caesar knew this was only the beginning. January 4th, 47 BC, 1 week later. Caesar's situation had grown desperate. His scattered fleet still hadn't arrived. His men were starving. The Optimates had stripped the countryside of grain, and Numidian cavalry patrols made foraging impossible. But Caesar was Caesar. He would not wait for death. He would go out and take what he needed. He led 15,000 men, half his total force, out of Ruspina to forage for supplies. 3 miles from the city, his scouts brought terrible news. Caesar rode ahead with his bodyguard. What he saw made his blood run cold. 12,000 light infantry, 10,000 cavalry, 8,000 Numidian, plus 1,600 Gallic and Germanic mercenaries, and commanding them, Titus Labienus, Caesar's former right-hand man, his most trusted general through 10 years of the Gallic Wars, the man Caesar called friend, now his most dangerous enemy. And beside Labienus, Petreius, another veteran with 30 years of military experience. Caesar had 400 cavalry, Labienus had 10,000. Caesar had mostly raw recruits. Labienus commanded battle-hardened veterans
who knew every trick Caesar had ever used. Labienus deployed in a long, stretched formation, cavalry on the wings, light infantry hidden among them. He seized the high ground on both flanks. He denied Caesar room to maneuver, denied him terrain advantage. Labienus knew Caesar's tactics better than Caesar's own shadow. And then he attacked. Caesar's legions countercharged, but as they clashed, something unexpected happened. The Numidian cavalry fell back. Caesar's men pursued, straight into Labienus's trap. The hidden infantry emerged, pinning Caesar's legions in place. The Numidian cavalry circled back, pelting their legions with missiles from all sides. On the flanks, Caesar's small cavalry force fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed in minutes, routed and scattered. Caesar's army was now completely surrounded, a perfect killing circle. A veteran of the 10th Legion, one of the few cohorts that crossed with Caesar, recognized Labienus. Rage filled his veins. This traitor had fought beside them for a decade, had shared their victories, had been like a brother. He hurled his javelin with every ounce of strength. It flew true, striking Labienus's horse through the neck. The beast collapsed, trapping Labienus beneath it. But Labienus's wound only delayed the inevitable. Caesar's men were being cut down from every direction. Missiles rained from every angle. Raw recruits began to panic. One Aquilifer, a standard-bearer, turned to flee. Caesar saw him, grabbed him, spun him around to face the enemy. The sun was setting, darkness was coming, and Caesar knew if they didn't reach Ruspina's defenses before nightfall, his army would be annihilated. It was an insane order to turn half your army around in the middle of a surrounded battle. One mistake and the whole line would collapse. But this was the Roman legion. This was training. This was discipline forged in 100 battles. Every other cohort executed a perfect about-face. Caesar's line was now fighting outward in both directions, like a spear with 2 points. A hail of heavy javelins erupted from Caesar's line, both directions simultaneously. The Numidian light infantry and cavalry, not expecting a 2-directional assault, pulled back to skirmish and regroup. Caesar's men moved, organized, disciplined, death at their backs, death at their fronts, but moving. Then Betrayals arrived with fresh reinforcements, 1,600 more Numidian cavalry, eager for Roman blood. They pursued Caesar's retreating men, closing for the kill, but Caesar turned the tables one final time. His exhausted men turned and charged their pursuers. The sudden aggression shocked the Numidians. In the chaos, Betrayals himself was wounded. The pursuit faltered. Caesar seized his high ground, daring the enemy to attack uphill. But Labienus and Betrayals, both injured, had lost too many men. Their troops were exhausted. Both sides withdrew. Caesar's men stumbled back to Ruspina, bloodied but battered, but alive. Caesar had nearly lost everything. He'd been outmaneuvered by his former friend, surrounded, outgeneraled, but he had survived. And Caesar, battered, bloody, but unbroken, would learn from this day. The real war was just beginning. The next morning, Caesar surveyed his position with cold calculation. He was trapped, outnumbered, starving. His reputation, built on speed and aggression, was being destroyed with every day he stayed behind these walls. But if Caesar couldn't attack, he would do what Romans did better than anyone: build. His men worked night and day. They pulled archers and marines off his warships to supplement his forces. They trained in new tactics, mixing light infantry with cavalry, mimicking Labienus's strategy. Meanwhile, the noose tightened. Metellus Scipio, overall commander of the Optimate forces, arrived with the full might of the Republican army. 14 legions, 60,000 men, and marching beside him, 120 war elephants, massive, armored beasts that could shatter a legion's formation with a single charge. And still more were coming. King Juba of Numidia was mobilizing his full army. If Juba arrived with his 4 Numidian legions and thousands more cavalry, Caesar's army wouldn't just be outnumbered, it would be obliterated. Messages from Rome brought more bad news. Mark Antony, Caesar's lieutenant governing Italy, had lost control. Debt riots, political chaos. Even Caesar's own veteran legions in Campania had mutinied, demanding payment and discharge. Caesar's empire was crumbling while he was trapped in Africa. But waiting was torture. Every day, Scipio would march his entire army out of camp and draw up in battle formation. The earth would shake with the march of 60,000 men. The air would split with the trumpet calls of war elephants.
April 4th, 47 BC. 3 months since Caesar's desperate landing. The deadlock had dragged on. Both sides had skirmished. Both had won and lost minor engagements. Neither could deliver a killing blow. Caesar's patience was exhausted. He needed to force Scipio into a situation where he had to fight, where retreat was impossible. In the dead of night, Caesar abandoned his camp. His army marched in total darkness toward the coastal city of Thapsus, a major port holding massive supplies and armories. By dawn, Caesar's army surrounded Thapsus and began the siege. But more importantly, Caesar had positioned himself brilliantly. Outside Thapsus was the Marsh of Mocnine, a vast, impassable swamp. Any approaching army could only reach Caesar through 2 narrow coastal passages, one to the east, one to the north. Caesar built 2 forts. The eastern passage was blocked by 3 cohorts in a fortified position, impossible to break through. The second fort surrounded Thapsus itself. Scipio would have to come through the northern passage, only one direction. Caesar had eliminated the enemy's numerical advantage with terrain. It was a masterpiece of strategic positioning. When Scipio arrived and saw Caesar's eastern fort, he knew he'd been outmaneuvered. He left a small force under Afranius to watch the eastern passage, then ordered a forced march around the western edge of the marsh to reach the northern approach. Scipio's strategy now was desperate: split his forces. Juba and Labienus would command the Numidian cavalry in a separate camp. Scipio would approach from the north, Afranius would push from the east, a pincer to crush Caesar. But it would take time to coordinate, time Caesar wouldn't give them. Scipio's army arrived at the northern passage, exhausted from the night's forced march. Part of his men immediately began constructing a new camp. The rest formed battle lines. On each flank, massive war elephants in gleaming armor. Behind them, cavalry. In the center, legions of infantry, many of them raw recruits. But Scipio had a problem. Juba and Labienus were still too far away with most of the Numidian cavalry, and Caesar wouldn't wait. Caesar deployed in the classic 3-line formation. His finest legions, the 10th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, held the critical positions. The 5th Legion was split and stationed as a 4th line behind each flank, specifically trained to handle the elephants. Archers, slingers, and light infantry protected the extreme flanks. Caesar was hesitant. Despite having engineered the perfect battlefield conditions, something felt wrong. Was this a trap? But his veterans had had enough. 3 months of starvation, 3 months of skirmishes and raids, 3 months of Scipio parading his army daily, taunting them. Many of these men were supposed to be retired. They'd earned their land and pensions. Instead, they'd been dragged to Africa to finish a war that should have ended at Pharsalus. A trumpeter from the 10th Legion, without Caesar's orders, sounded the charge, but it was too late. The right flank surged forward, battle-hungry veterans charging toward the enemy.
Caesar spurred his horse and rode to the front of the 10th and 7th legions, taking personal command. He would not let his men fight without him. Hundreds of arrows slammed into the elephants on Scipio's left. The beasts panicked, turning and stampeding back into their own infantry, crushing men beneath their feet. On Caesar's left flank, the elephants charged Caesar's line, but the legions had trained for this. They parted smoothly, a perfect choreographed movement. The 5th Legion stepped forward with long spears, jabbing at the elephants' vulnerable spots, while trumpeters blasted deafening notes. The elephants broke. They turned and ran, straight back into Scipio's right flank, crushing their own men in blind panic. Now both of Scipio's flanks were being attacked by their own war elephants. Caesar's legions followed close behind the stampeding beasts, cutting down disorganized Optimate troops. Scipio's left flank, facing Caesar's 10th and 7th legions, broke almost immediately. Then the center collapsed, then the right. Within minutes, Scipio's entire battle line was in full retreat. Some tried to fight, most just ran, stampeding toward the half-built camp, trampling their own comrades in their desperation to escape. Caesar's men were in a blood frenzy now. They stormed through the fleeing Optimates, killing anyone who stood, cutting down those who ran. They reached the unfinished camp and massacred the men still building it. The garrison at Thapsus tried to sally out, hoping to catch Caesar's army from behind, but the 2 legions Caesar had left in his own camp easily repelled them. Then those 2 legions marched down the eastern passage toward Juba and Afranius's camps. Scipio's fleeing men reached Juba's camp, only to find it already under assault by Caesar's main force. Juba saw Caesar's main force approaching and made the only choice he could: retreat. He, Labienus, and Betrayals fled with what cavalry they could gather. Caesar's army stormed the camp, and then came the massacre. Some sources blame Caesar. Others say he ordered his men to spare the enemy, but his battle-maddened soldiers disobeyed. Whatever the truth, thousands of Optimates were slaughtered, men who'd surrendered, men who'd thrown down their weapons, men begging for the mercy Caesar was famous for giving. This time, there was no mercy. When the sun set on April 6th, the battlefield was a graveyard. Optimate losses ranged between 10,000 and 50,000. Sources disagree. Caesar's losses were as few as 50 or as many as 1,000. It was a complete, total, devastating victory. The Optimate faction in Africa had been annihilated. In the days that followed, the Optimate leadership scattered like leaves in a storm. Labienus, Varus, and Pompey's son Sextus escaped to Spain. They would continue fighting Caesar there. Afranius and Faustus Cornelius Sulla gathered survivors and tried to pillage their way across Mauritania. They were caught and killed. Betrayals and King Juba fled to Numidia, expecting support, but the Numidians had turned against their king. The gates were barred to them. With no options left, the 2 men shared a final dinner. They decided to duel each other, so at least one might die honorably in battle rather than by suicide. Juba won and killed Betrayals. Then Juba had his own slave kill him. Scipio tried to sail to Spain with a small fleet, but he was caught in a storm, forced to port at Hippo. Caesar's fleet found him. In the brief naval battle that followed, when defeat became inevitable, Scipio stabbed himself. The last Scipio of any real historical note was dead. Only one major Optimate leader remained, Marcus Porcius Cato, the ideological heart of the Republican cause, Caesar's greatest philosophical opponent. As Caesar's army approached Utica, Cato made his final preparations. He held a feast with his friends. He entrusted his children to Lucius Caesar, a distant cousin of Julius who'd supported Pompey, and then he retired to his bedroom. He read Plato's Phaedo, a dialogue about the immortality of the soul, and Socrates' peaceful acceptance of death. When he finished, he stabbed himself in the stomach. In death, Cato robbed Caesar of what would have been one of his greatest triumphs, the chance to publicly spare his greatest enemy and prove his legendary mercy. Caesar spent time in Africa, hunting down those who had funded the Optimate war effort. Then he returned to Rome victorious. He retired his oldest veterans generously. He held 4 triumphs for Gaul, Egypt, Asia, and Africa. The Senate bestowed unprecedented powers on him: censorial powers for 3 years, dictatorship powers for 10. For all practical purposes, Julius Caesar was now the sole ruler of the Roman Republic. But the war wasn't over. Pompey's sons still resisted in Spain, and in Rome itself, darker forces were gathering. Men who called themselves liberators. Men who believed that the only way to save the Republic was to kill the man who had conquered it. But that is another story. Caesar entered the Senate chamber beneath a statue of Pompey, the man he'd once called ally, then enemy, and then wept for when presented with his severed head. 60 conspirators waited, men Caesar had pardoned, men he'd promoted, men he called friends. Marcus Brutus, whose mother was Caesar's lover; Cassius, who Caesar never truly trusted; Decimus Brutus, named in Caesar's will as a second heir; Trebonius, Cimber, Galba, all veterans of Caesar's campaigns. They believed they were saving Rome from tyranny. Caesar believed he was saving Rome from chaos. 23 stab wounds, only one was fatal.
The man who'd conquered Gaul, crossed the Rubicon, defeated Pompey at Pharsalus, survived Alexandria, crushed Pharnaces in 5 days, and destroyed the Optimates at Thapsus, died at the base of Pompey's statue, betrayed by men he'd shown mercy. Did Caesar make the world a better place? Was he a tyrant or a savior, a warmongering glory seeker, or a reformer trying to fix a broken system? History has debated these questions for 2,000 years, and perhaps there is no single answer. What we know is this: Caesar changed the world. His actions led to the rise of the Roman Empire and all the effects, good and bad, that would follow. He left us with 2 questions that echo through the ages. What would have happened if he had survived? And when does a hero become a tyrant, or a tyrant become a hero? This is Caesar's story. The man who came, who saw, who conquered, and who died for trying to save the republic he loved.